Warning: the nitric acid is dangerous and has very strong oxidizability and can cause some kind of gloves to burn, so it must be treated carefully. It has been a long time since I've made some nitric acid, and today I'm just gonna have a try. The ingredient I use is some fertilizer and sulfuric acid made in the form of video. But unlike others who simply just use the potassium nitrate, the fertilizer I use is calcium ammonium nitrate, which has the chemical formula like this, and it's much more difficult to deal with. The reason why I use this is that the individual is not allowed to buy potassium nitrate without an allowance from the government. The way I turn the fertilizer to the acid is quite simple. The first step of it is turning it into sodium nitrate, and the second step is turning the salt into nitric acid by distilling the mixture of the salt and the sulfuric acid, and collect the fraction, which has the boiling point around 83 Celsius. And now, let's start with the fertilizer. The first step can be separated into two smaller ones. The first is turning the fertilizer into calcium nitrate with some calcium hydroxide. The next is turning it into sodium nitrate. And to begin with, I weigh about 500 grams of fertilizer, and according to the calculation, to drive away the ammonium ion in it completely, this should be about 35 grams of calcium hydroxide. Then I just add the fertilizer and the calcium hydroxide powder into a big flask. And to make the reaction go on quicker, some water is also added to the flask. And then I turn on the heater and the water pump. What's happening is that hydroxide ion combine with ammonium ion and form ammonium hydroxide. Since it has strong tendency to reduce to ammonia gas and water under heating, the gas just get out of the solution and the water just left in it. And if you put a pH test paper in the gas, you will see that the paper just turned blue, and that means that's exactly ammonia. After about half an hour later, the reaction just came to an end. The gas out is not able to make the paper blue, so I turn off the heater and just let it cool down. What I have now is some white liquid. The precipitate in it is mostly calcium carbonate and calcium hydroxide, which is nearly insoluble in water. It's not a good choice right now for filtering it, because to make a sodium nitrate, it's needed to add sodium carbonate, and that will produce some new precipitate. The reason why I have to turn it into sodium nitrate is that it's still not enough to use, because the calcium ion will react with sulfuric acid and produce insoluble calcium sulfate. That would prevent the nitric acid I want from being heated. Therefore, it would be harder for me to get acid, and that's apparently bad news. A few minutes later, I filled it all, and what I have now is some nice and clear sodium nitrate solution. And to get a crystal of it, I just boil it with an alcohol burner. Then scrape them into a new beaker. Since it's only about 140 grams, I make it up again. And what I have here is totally about 300 grams of sodium nitrate. Then I put over this salt with 240 milliliters of concentrated sulfuric acid. To collect the nitric acid, I just turn on the heater and the water pump. What's going on in it is that the sulfuric acid reacts with sodium nitrate to produce nitric acid and sodium bisulfate. Well later, there's just some nitric acid came out, and the thing which makes it be dilute yellowish is something called nitrogen dioxide, where the boiling point of the liquid is around 83 Celsius, which means it's probably just pure nitric acid. And after just about 10 minutes heating later, what's left in it is some melted sodium bisulfate. And there's no more liquid came out, so I turn off the heater and let it cool down. And to know the concentration of it, I measure its density by weighing 10 milliliters of the acid. It shows that it's roughly about 60%. So I let it react with some copper. Few minutes later, what's left in it is just some nice green liquid. That's really cool. Additionally, to show you why you shouldn't walk with some kind of gloves, I prepared some of those. Then drop a few drops of the acid on it. As you can see, they immediately started to fume, which honestly would be worse than walk with empty hands. At least it wouldn't burn itself. This is Chemtrail. See you next.